Yeah, hi everyone. Let us start this lecture. Okay. So, in this lecture, any doubt from the previous classes, any problem you are facing, anything you would like to ask, or all well? No problem. All right. So, let us start this. In this chapter is basically from class 12th NCERT. Okay. And in this chapter, we will be discussing about the era of one party dominance. What does that mean? What is the meaning of the era of one party
It was chapter second when I was in 12th.
Yes, this is a chapter from class 12th NCRT. Yes, exactly. So, in this chapter, we will be discussing about the era of one party dominance. What does that mean? That means that because in India, we have adopted a federal system wherein there are two levels of law making bodies. One is at the center, another one is at the states. Okay, so at the center there is parliament comprising of two houses, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. All right, and at the state level, yeah, good afternoon. So, and at the state level, there are state legislative assemblies. In 6 states, there is bicameral legislature. Okay, where the laws are made. All right. So, what is the meaning of one party dominance? One party dominance means there was a certain time in the politics of India after independence. For that time, both at center as well as states, the party that was winning and that was dominating the Indian politics was the Congress party. All right. So that time period is basically categorized, or I would say is referred to as Congress system. Okay, by a professor of University of Delhi, Professor Rajni Kothari. Okay, Professor Rajni Kothari gave this terminology, that is Congress system. That means after independence of India, for a very long period of time, at both the center as well as at the state level, there was dominance of a single party in majority. That was the Congress party, and phase is called as Congress system. Now, understanding the situation, so the situation is that so India was born in a very difficult situation which you know better. आप लोगों को तो और भी ज्यादा अच्छे से, बिकॉज आपने अब पढ़ लिया है, आपको ये बात पता चल गई है दैट इन इंडिया देयर वाज लार्ज स्केल माइग्रेशन, किलिंग, डिस्प्लेसमेंट ऑफ पीपल, damage to collateral as well as life. So all these problems were there during the time of independence, and at that time, in such situation, the task of nation building is very much difficult and very much complicated. It's not a simple task, it's not an easy task. Many newly independent countries believed democracy would weaken their national unity. Many countries, because after the period of Second World War, majorly post the time of 1945, in the history of world, this period is called as the phase of decolonization, because after the Second World War, many countries newly, which were earlier the part of British Empire or the Europe, they were the European colonies, they were now being decolonized. This phase is called as the phase of decolonization. After decolonization, many newly established states were emerging. States at international level means countries, so many new countries were emerging, and there was a wide belief in those newly independent countries that to achieve unity, territorial as well as sentimental unity in the country, there is a need to not to adopt democracy. So at that point of time, there was no very strong sentiment for adopting the democratic model, because according to them, if we adopt democracy, we will have to give equality to everyone. Now, by giving equality, by giving freedom, many anti-national voices might emerge. This I'm not talking about India, because in India there was already a established sentiment that after being independent we will be adopting democracy. But in majority of the countries, I would say, there was a sentiment that by democracy the national unity might get weakened. Okay, so they preferred non-democratic systems like only one leader rule, one party rule, or I would say military rule. Don't go too far. Just have a look at your neighborhood. We can see that in Pakistan, just after the death of Jinnah, the military took the power of the civilian administration there. In Myanmar also got independence during that time only, in the during the phase of decolonization. So just have a look at the situation in Myanmar. There is moreover a military rule there in Myanmar. Now also have a look at Sri Lanka, what just happened in Sri Lanka. Okay, so don't go too far. Just now, even after going far, just have a look at Chile, have a look at Zimbabwe, what just happened there. So that is the best portrayal, that there was no very strong sentiment in favor of adopting democracy in those newly independent states after the phase of decolonization. So such regimes promised the people that we will give you democracy, but later on, after a complete unity in our country is achieved. If any problem is there from this particular PPT, please do respond. Okay. Now coming on to the choice of India. What choice did India made? I already told you that India's condition were not very different from other nations, but the difference was there in one aspect, and the difference was that Indian leader chose the difficult path to democracy, establishing democracy in a country that did not had any such strong institution made by Indian, or not even having any kind of like election mechanism, proper mechanism to conduct election. People were dying, were not getting food to even eat, they were not aware about what democracy looks like. The people did not knew anything about democratic practices. It was like, even like, then to make the constitution, it was even more difficult to inculcate the democratic practices in the minds of those people. So this was even more difficult task for the government to do, okay, at that time. But still India chose this very difficult path, and this choice was natural. Why it was natural? Why there was no other choice other than democracy to the leaders of India? This was because during the freedom struggle, the sentiment in favor of democracy deeply got inculcated in the minds of Indians. All right, leaders believed that politics was a solution, not a problem. For politics, so we have to look to politics as a solution. Politics can be proved as a solution to all the problems in the country, not a problem in itself. And the aim of this politics was to protect and pursue the public interest. Okay, and to pursue this public interest, there is a need to adopt democracy. All right, now the constitution and the first government, you know this very well, that the Constitution of India was adopted in 26th November 1949, and this particular date is also mentioned in the preamble of the Indian Constitution. Okay, this is mentioned in the preamble. So it was signed just 2 days back on 24th January 1950, and came to force on 26th January 1950. Till then, India was just run by an interim government. After the constitution, the first elected democratic
Sir,
government had to be formed. Yes.
sir, you said that India does not have any motive to adopt democracy, but during freedom struggle, the Indians were fighting for their equal representation. So means democracy was there in their mind already.
So this is only what I said. So what's the question?
No, sir, you said that India do not know and have any motive to adopt democracy
Array, but
only.
there we know that some system exists, but in reality, knowing about that system is very different. We knew such, okay, like we want representation, we want such representation, but before that we did not had any experience of conducting. Do you think like just demanding representation means we know how representation will achieve? Just by demanding representation, it doesn't means that we knew how to conduct election in a country that has a very large population, very large diversity. We did not had any kind of election commission for that task. We did not had any suitable bodies so that can basically keep a check on that. We did not had literacy. People, even the sign, the symbol that are given to the political parties nowadays is just that legacy only. Why the signs were given to political party? Because people couldn't read the name of the political party is written on the ballot paper. Okay, they couldn't read, so that's why sign was adopted. So basically we did not had any such experience. Yes, such some sort of experiences were there after basically the councils act, but that was also very much limited. That was just limited to basically going inside the houses and to see how the thing works. But people at large have a large image. People at large did not had any experience of participating in those democratic processes, right? At large there was no as such experience. Okay, yes, we were fighting for representation. Yes, even some sort of minimal representation was also given, and the result of which was that after being independent, those leaders who participated in the Indian legislative councils, they were the only one who were running the Indian parliament with their experience. That is also true. But yes, people at large lacked that experience. People at large did not had any such experience. All right. So now moving here, are you clear with this?
Yes, sir.
Not satisfied well with the answer?
No, sir, I am satisfied.
Okay, so after the constitution, the first elected democratic government had to be formed and rules were ready. Okay, now institution had to be set up. Okay, now the rules were led by the constitution. But so that's why I always say that election commission, UPSC, SPSC, even parliament, even state legislative assemblies or councils, even whatsoever body you will name, these bodies are highly important and carries a very big importance in running this country, in running the governmental structure of this country. But these are in itself creation of constitution. Who has created these bodies? Has some people came together, like was there like this thing happened that people came together and created these bodies? No, people came together in form of constituent assembly. They sat inside the constituent assembly, they created the constitution, and these bodies are intact. The constitution, the creation of the constitution. Okay, so constitution has created these bodies. All right. So setting up the election system. So the election system of India was set up in January 1950. It was in 1950 that after making of the constitution, the election commissions was set up. Now, who was the election commissioner at that time? So first chief election commissioner was Sukumar Sen. Okay, so initially elections were expected to be held in 1950, but the preparation basically took a very long time, and due to which the elections were delayed. What were the difficulties that were being faced by India in the at the time of the first elections? So the difficulty was that, so the exercise of delimitation was in itself was very difficult. What is the meaning of delimitation? Delimitation means drawing, What drawing? So for example, in Lok Sabha there are 543 seats in total. Maximum strength is 550, but at present it is 543. Now 543 seats, what happens? How the people, how the representative comes and holds these 543 seats? For it, the entire country is divided into 543 electoral constituencies. The exercise of drawing these boundaries of the electoral constituencies, this exercise is called as delimitation exercise. Now this delimitation exercise was in itself a very difficult exercise. The electoral rolls that were basically formed, the electoral rolls that were basically prepared. What is the meaning of electoral roll? Electoral roll is basically the list of names of all the eligible voters, of all the eligible voters. Okay, so now this list of the name of all those voters, eligible voter, had to be prepared for all the eligible voters. All right, now around what happened, this was a very big mistake that happened. Now also, if anyone of you is from village, you might relate to this thing, that in villages still no one know the name of our mothers or sisters. It is generally like wife of, it is generally like daughter of, it is generally like sister of. So this thing happens. Result of this thing even was very strong during the time we got independence. And during this time in 1950, way back then, we found that around name of around 40 lakh women was wrongly named. Okay, their name was missing from the list of electoral roll, and their name was just mentioned as wife of, daughter of. So their name was just mentioned like that. Their real name was mentioned from the list. So again, revision had to happen. Okay, so revision of this electoral list took place, and India had around 17 crore voters, out of which almost 85% people did not knew about how to even read or write in any language, even a single word. They did not knew this thing. That was the definition of literacy. Okay, only 15% literacy rate was there during that time in India, and almost 3200 MLAs and 489 Lok Sabha members had to be elected. Over 3 lakh officials were trained for conducting this election duty. So these were the difficulties that were faced by Indian government in conducting those elections. All right, now a bold democratic experiment happened. Okay, now this was termed as a bold democratic experiment. Why experiment? Because at that time the international media was writing in their article and were just waiting for the fall of India. They were making mockery out of this exercise election, the biggest ever exercise conducted in the world. This exercise was first time just after being independent was conducted in India, and those international medias were making mockery out of it. They were predicting even before the elections actually happened that India is soon going to fall. Okay, this experiment they thought that is going to fail, but today, standing in 2026, we can strongly claim this thing, that this exercise was very much successful, and the result is that we are standing in incredible India, vibrant India, prospering so well, right? So here we can see that democracy had earlier existed mainly in the rich and only in literate countries, because India was a poor nation at that time, and even there was a high level of illiteracy in India. We can see that many European countries had not ever even given right to vote to women, And at that time democracy only existed in the rich countries and literate countries. India was the country that basically conducted elections on the basis of universal adult franchisee. Okay, India adopted universal adult franchisee being a poor and a illiterate society. Critics called it very risky and called it unrealistic to even happen. Some even predicted its failure. Some even predicted that India will fail as a democracy. Okay, moving ahead, how the first general elections happened. So the first general elections were postponed twice due to the administrative failures. Finally it happened in October 1951 to February 1952. That's why if anyone will ask you in which year the first general elections of India were conducted, so the correct year is often referred to as 1952. Okay, most voting took place because in January 1952. All right, campaigning, polling, counting, this all took around 6 months. Elections were very much competitive with more than 4 candidates per seat in several seats. For just contesting for a one seat of Lok Sabha from a particular electoral constituencies, there were at least 4 candidates who sought to be win as the candidate from that particular constituency. All right, just give me a second. Yeah. So results were accepted as fair by both the winners as well as the losers. Okay, those who even lost the also celebrated the victory is the electoral processes that happened. Okay, no one at least said that the elections were not right. Okay, this is a very recent phenomena that allegations are now being imposed on the election commission. What used to happen was everyone used to accept either their defeat or their victory. No one used to
Sir, your voice is not clear, sir.
is this clear now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. So during that time, so people were not alleging that the election were in itself not right. It was only that people who lost even they also accepted their loss in those elections. Okay, what was the method of voting? So the method of voting was basically the system of ballot boxes. Okay, nowadays what is there? There is electronic voting machine. Okay, so EVM is basically used nowadays. Okay, even now the panchayati raj elections are happening using ballot paper only. Okay, what is a ballot box or ballot paper based elections? So there is simply a box with a basically space to send inside or to drop a piece of paper. There is a piece of paper that is given to every candidate. The name of the political parties are written like this with their symbol. A person casting his or her vote has to pick up a stamp, has to put the stamp in front of the candidate to which they want to cast their vote. After doing this, they need to fold the paper twice. Okay, after that they need to put it down from this space inside the ballot box, after which at a particular designated place the counting of these votes happens. Okay, so the votes dropped blank ballot paper into the chosen box. Okay, so about 20 lakhs steel boxes were used during those elections. Later, the ballot paper were with names and symbols were introduced, but earlier it was just blank only. Okay, it did not had the printed thing. So for that, they need to write basically. Okay, or basically stamp was used for the particular political party. Okay, later on, those ballot papers with names and symbols were introduced. This method continued for almost 40 years. Okay, in 1990s, electronic voting machine EVM was introduced. By 2004, EVM were used across the country. Okay, now even for your current affair, there is with EVM a VVPAT, verifiable paper audit trial. What is that? That is basically made mandatory. Okay, after casting the vote, there will be a box on which screen will be there. On that screen, a paper will come. On that paper, the political party to which you casted your vote, the name of that political party will appear. Then it will go down inside the box. It is basically just to verify. What to verify? To verify that whether the party that you just casted your vote, whether the vote has gone to that political party or not. It was to verify that thing. Okay, moving ahead, now talking about the success of Indian democracy. What about the success of Indian democracy? So the 1952 elections proved the critics wrong. Indian voters showed the political maturity that they had, and even the discipline that Indian culture holds. Okay, Indian elections became a global example. It proved that democracy could work even in poor and illiterate countries. India's first general election became a landmark exercise in the world democratic history, wherever democracy is there. Now, talking about the result of the first three general elections in India, in those three general elections, we saw that the natural winner in those elections was the Congress party. Okay, now talking about the victory of the Congress party, the victory of Congress, Indian National Congress, was widely accepted. Okay, why the Congress party was the only party that won so many seats in those three elections? It was because that the Congress party enjoyed the legacy of the national movement. It was in year 1885 that the Indian National Congress party was formed. After year 1885, Congress party had pan India presence. It was spreaded from Lahore till, even I would say, Manipur, even till south Madras, and even in north, that is in Srinagar. So it had pan India presence. Okay, the party was led by Jawaharlal Nehru, who was a charismatic leader. It had the He had the charisma, okay, to basically rule. And Congress in the first general election won, out of like 489 seats, it won 364 seats. Okay, in total. Near rival in, I think, the South Indian provinces, South Indian seats, the rival was Communist Party of India, which won in Lok Sabha around 16 seats. Okay, so it basically formed. So in even in states like Travancore, Cochin, Madras, Odisha, the Congress only formed the government. Okay, now talking about Nehru, so Nehru was also now made the first prime minister of India after the first election. Okay, talking about the continued dominance of the Congress party, now even in the elections of 1957 and in the elections of 1962 general election, Congress retained its dominance. Okay, it won around 3 by 4th of the total seats of Lok Sabha, and there the opposition party there could not even win more than 1 by 10th of the total seat that were won by Congress party. Okay, so Congress controlled even the center as well as the states also. Okay, so state politics was also very much dominated by Indian National Congress, and the central government was also dominated by Indian National Congress from the year 1952 to 1962. All right, this happened. Now, what was the role of the electoral system? Now, understand one thing. So, the role of electoral system was such that in India we have adopted first past the post system. Okay, first past the post system. It is often referred to as FPTP system. First past the post system. What is the meaning of this system? It means that, for example, there is a X constituency. Okay, there are candidates 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, or let's say just 5. 5 candidates are there. Okay, so in total there are 5 candidates. Okay, now what is the system in India? One system that also exists not in India is that a candidate to win a seat requires 50% plus one vote at least, then only they will win. But in India, the thing here is that a candidate, for example, one secures 10% votes, second candidate secures 20% vote, he secured 15% vote, he secured 25% vote. Okay, 40, 70. Now this candidate secured just 30% votes. But now who will basically be elected from this constituency? It will be candidate 5. Candidate 5 did not secure more than 50% plus one vote, but just secured 30% of the total votes. But what does our system says? So our system says that whosoever secures maximum number of votes will be elected from that particular constituency. Coming on to this point, whosoever secures maximum number of votes. So here, just by winning 30%, even less than, even very less than, I would say 50%, it's very less. Okay, so still this person will win. Now let us suppose similar constituency, Y is also there, A is also there, B is also there, and just like that 489 constituencies were there. So the Congress won the elections. One reason was because it enjoyed the colonial legacy, not colonial legacy, but the legacy of the national movement. Okay, because colonial legacy is a wrong word. Now it won the election because of the national movement, but this is also a reason behind the win of the Congress party, which was FPTP. Because by this system, even Congress in every constituency did not secure much votes, but still won. Okay, so that is what we were talking about. So here Congress was strengthened by the first past the post system. It was a strength provider to the Congress. Congress, by winning only 45% of the total votes, out of 100% votes, Congress won 45% votes in 1952, but still was able to secure 74% of the total seats in Lok Sabha. So, one very important reason behind a very large scale win of the Congress party was basically the FPTP system. All right. So, the Socialist Party got more than 10% of the vote, but still enjoyed just 3% of the seats. So, the reason behind these things is the FPTP system. Non-Congress votes were divided. On one side, the politics was like this only, that on one side, so all the like this election at every point of time just happened, that Congress versus others. Now Congress or majorly Communist Party of India. So at one side the Congress was very strong, but others included multiple parties. Some party got 5%, some party got 2%, some party. So the votes of opposition, because in 1952 election, the Congress party just won 45% of the total votes. Okay. And remaining 55% of the votes were secured by the opposition party only. So why still, by securing more than 55% of the votes, the opposition was not able to come to power? Because the opposition party was bifurcated. It was, I would say, divided, due to which the votes got divided. Okay, so that was a very important reason. Okay, so now coming on to this communist victory in Kerala. In Kerala, Communist Party came to power in 1957. This was a very major exception to the win of Congress. It was in Kerala this thing happened. Now the Communist Party in Kerala won 60 seats out of total 126. Out of total 126 seats, 60 seats were won by CPI. EMS Namboodiripad, he basically formed the government there. Now the question is that out of 126 seats, only 60 seats were won. That is somewhere less than 50% of the seats. Because you know this very well, that in, for example, state legislative assemblies, a party that will form the government, which means from which party chief minister will come, this party has to secure at least 50% plus one seat. So here 60 is a bit less than 50%, right? But still it basically formed the government under EMS Namboodiripad, because it had the support of very small other parties also. This in 1957 was a win of a communist party democratically ever in the world. In the world before this win, there was no single communist party that could have won any single election at the world level. All right. Now, coming on to this point, Congress launched a liberation struggle against the state government of Kerala. In 1959, the central government dismissed the Kerala ministry under Article 356. 356 article basically proposes the constitutional emergency, which says that if the central government, yeah, if the president is of the opinion that the state government is not going on according to the constitution, failure of state machinery has caused, that may lead to imposition of the president's rule in that state. which may also terminate their elected government, okay, or I would say dismiss their elected government, okay. So this action was criticized as the misuse of the constitutional power given under article 356. Now rise and limits of the socialist party, okay, so there were socialist ideas also within the Congress party. What used to happen during that time was the Congress party had socialist leaders within itself. Congress Socialist Party was basically formed in 1934, and in 1948 it became a separate socialist party. Otherwise, before that, in 1934, it was formed as a part of the Congress party only, as Congress Socialist Party. But later on in 1948, it became a separate party. All right. Socialist basically they supported democratic socialism. Socialism is not similar to what the socialism was as was proposed by Karl Marx, but it was a very different socialism. All right, their electoral performance remained weak despite of wide presence, okay. When elections adopted the goal of a socialistic pattern of society in 1955, socialists lost their distinctive appeal. What does that mean? That means before 1955, before 1955, there were so many socialists who were basically arguing that vote to us and we want to establish socialism in India, which means that we want to work for poor, we want to fight against inequality, we want to give status, equal status to everyone. All right, this was the idea of socialism. Now what happened in 1955, in the Avadi session of Indian National Congress, Congress itself stated that our goal in India is also to make the society on socialistic patterns. At that time, now Congress already had support of many people, and they stated that we basically want socialism. Now the appeal of other socialists was now ignored. Okay, just give me a second. Yeah. So this thing happened. Now other socialists which were there, now they lost their appeal. Now they did not had any further appeal left. Okay. Because Congress in itself adopted that its goal is basically to strengthen the socialistic pattern of society. All right. Now coming on to the next point, that is what was the nature of the Congress dominance, what was the nature of the dominance of the Congress party. So under this, what used to happen was a Congress, in India we witnessed a one party dominance called as the Congress dominance. Okay, now what is the meaning of this one party dominance? This wasn't unique in India. This was not at all unique. Many countries they also witnessed this one party dominance. Many countries like China, Cuba, Syria, they also allowed just one party even by law to exist in their country. Okay, just read this slide. I'm just coming in a minute. Not even a minute, 10 seconds. Yes. So it was not just India that witnessed such basically dominance of only one party. Okay, it was also China, Cuba, Syria, even in many countries like Myanmar, Egypt. They basically also functioned as a one party state due to the control of military, due to the legally
Sir,
established
can we
control.
sir, can we take North Korea example?
No, no, no. North Korea is a very different. The case of North Korea is very different. We cannot take the case of North Korea here, okay? Because in North Korea there was basically no as such movement that happened. The in North Korea, the thing that happened was basically earlier it was the occupation of North Korea under the Soviet Union. After which the Korean War happened, and after which there was actually no explicit demand for basically the democracy, and even because that was earlier only suppressed, and even uh, there was no as such independence movement that happened there. Okay, we are talking about the countries in the world. These are the examples of the countries that basically got independence from colonization. The case of North Korea is very different. Okay, so in these cases, democracy was basically compromised in these cases, and India emerged to be very different. Okay, India emerged to be very different because one party dominance existed within a democratic system. In India, the one party, that was Congress, that ruled under just a single, or it basically ruled under democracy. There, the government, like the military rule or the dictatorial rule, that came by destroying their constitution or democracy there. All right. So there, this was the difference. What was the nature of the dominance of Congress? In India, many parties contested elections freely and fairly. But despite this, Indian National Congress was the party that only won those elections repeatedly, even. So, Congress dominance was therefore very democratic. Okay, so many non-Congress parties also had seats. If the win of Congress was undemocratic, then Congress might have got every seat. No, but this wasn't true because other parties were also winning but not getting majority, obviously. Okay, so now this experience was similar to the dominance of African National Congress in South Africa after the fight against apartheid system. Okay, what was the major reason of this? What was the major reason for Congress success? See, the first point was obviously that the Congress inherited the legacy of the national freedom struggle. Second is that the freedom struggle leaders were the only leader who contested elections from Congress. Okay, so the leaders who fought for our independence, then after independence contested as a part of or as a member of Congress. This gave Congress a upper hand strength. Okay, Congress was already a well organized party. Congress was a very large scale organized party. कोई नहीं, आप पी लो चाय, पियो पियो आप पियो, अरे आप लोग आप पी लो चाय, है ना, कोई नहीं, हाँ. So Congress was in itself a very well organized party. Congress had pan India organization. Okay, so other parties which came in the politics of India entered very late. So, because other parties entered late and Congress had the first of the block advantage, that was the first reason for the grand win of the Congress party. All right. So, those who stands first gets the first opportunity. That was also a very big reason. So they had strong organizational presence throughout the country. Okay, and now coming on to another reason is that Congress was very inclusive in nature. Okay, how? during our freedom struggle, you might have also observed this thing, that after, like for example, the Congress fought so many movements. Even just have a look at the movement fought under Gandhi. Champaran movement, Khilafat movement, Ahmedabad Mill Satyagrah, Kheda Satyagrah. Okay, then came your non-cooperation movement. After that, your Salt March. Okay, in between also there were so many movements. So those movements actually touched every section of our society. Okay, and the nature of Congress was that it was very inclusive in nature. It had people from all the diverse section of the society. It had people from every section of society. So that is why everyone was there to vote for Congress, because it carried the legacy of every section of the society. All right. Congress as a social coalition. What does that mean? That mean that Congress was not just a single party. It was a social coalition. See, Congress started as a party in 1885. Okay, you know this very well. In 1885, A.O. Hume formed Congress Party as a party of educated urban elites. Okay, you know this. Now, over the time, the movement that was carried by Congress became a mass movement. It expanded, its roots expanded, and even the peasants, workers, industrialists, people from rural areas, people from urban areas, they subsequently joined Congress. Different classes, upper class, lower class, laborer, worker, rich person, industrialist, capitalist, people from every caste, people from every religion, and even people speaking or every language, they were represented in the Congress party. Leadership of the Congress party also expanded from urban elites to rural and agricultural leaders. By independence, the Congress party became a broad social coalition. It did not just now, in the formal terms, if we talk about what is coalition, now it is the government that is formed by the support of more than one party. But here, Congress, being just alone a single party, was in itself a coalition. How come so? Because Congress had representation from diverse section of society. It included various people from every angle of society, every class, every caste, every religion, every section of society. Okay, even talking about different types of ideologies that exist in the at the world level, even I would say. Okay, so the Congress included all of them. Okay, even conservatives, radicals, moderates, extremists, right, left, centrist. Okay, every single group, and even some communist leaders were also there in the party, which later on separated from the Congress party. Even I would say some socialist leaders were also a part of the Congress party, which later on, I just told you. Okay, some time back only I told you na. So they later on formed their separate Congress Socialist Party, but otherwise earlier they were part of the Congress Party. Okay, tolerance and factionalism. Now there were different factions in the Congress party. There were several factions. Okay, but what used to happen was Congress functioned like a coalition within a single party. Okay, it avoided any extreme position so that none of the member who is professing basically any particular extreme ideology will get irritated by that. They never adopted any kind of extreme position. They preferred compromise between different sections of the society. This internal difference was tolerated and managed. It was not like, for example, there are two members, X and Y. X is the leader, Y is basically a normal member of the Congress party. Now, for example, A is the prime minister and B is the is a cabinet minister, let's say, of the Congress party. Now, if B is saying something very different from A and A is saying something very different from B, they used to tolerate it. They used to manage it instead of throwing each other out of the political party or basically trying to get against both of them. This never used to happen during that time. So Congress basically knew it very well on how to tolerate those differences and also how to manage those differences. All right. So groups who were unhappy with the leadership even stayed within the political party. They never tried to go away from those political parties. Internal group inside the Congress were basically termed as internal factions, and that's why it is also called as the main characteristic feature of the Congress party at the ground level was the tolerance of internal factionalism. Okay, so those factions were based on several ideologies, those were based on several ambitions and even mutual rivalries between the party leaders, but still they managed it. They never tried to get separated from each other. All right, this was the major characteristic feature of the Congress party. All right, so factions were basically a source of strength. For example, there was a bill that was presented by the Congress government. Okay. Now let's say there is a bill that is presented by the Congress government. Now what used to happen was that this particular bill, because it was presented by a party that itself has so many factions, that itself has so many ideologies, so this particular bill reflected the aspirations and ideas of diverse section of society. It had the representation from liberals, it had the representation from conservative, it had opinions from peasants, it had opinions from industrialists, it even had the opinions from basically the labor section, the worker section of society. So that means the factionalism that was there in the Congress party was a matter of strength for them rather than being a weakness for them. Are you getting the point? So the leaders with different interest remained inside the Congress. Okay, and basically the state congresses also had multiple units including multiple factions and also having various different views in them. This made Congress to appear as a broad centrist party. Okay, now going left means leftist party, going right in terms of basically ideology is called as rightist party. Now this was centrist party. Okay, this came to be known as centrist party. Are you getting the point? Okay, now moving ahead is basically this made Congress to appear as a broad centrist party. Opposition politics basically influenced the Congress party. Opposition parties always used to criticize them. They used to exist also at that time, but opposition parties influenced Congress but never divided Congress. Okay, political competition largely took place within the Congress. There was, in fact, why so many opposition parties were not there during the time of the dominance of Congress party. It was because it did not needed that. Country did not needed that. Why I am saying this? Because every interest was all over being reflected in the Congress party itself. It did not needed such kind of differences. All right. So uh, now this thing came that's called as Congress system. Now this system also came. So Congress acted as both a ruling party also and as a opposition party within itself also. Where was opposition located? Opposition was there inside the Congress party. Okay, opposition was there inside it, within it. Opposition parties pressured and criticized from outside. Okay, so this unique system of dominance was called as a Congress system. All right. Emergence of opposition parties. So when, why and how the opposition parties emerged in the politics of India. What happened? India basically did not have the opposition parties, even did have the opposition parties, sorry, in the early years, but those opposition parties were not basically having the pan India presence, I would say, or were not getting so much majority or seats in the assemblies. All right. So what used to happen was many parties existed beside the Indian National Congress also. Okay, so India had diverse and active opposition parties like many other democratic countries, but see, some opposition parties were formed even before the first general election. That's also very true. Several of the parties came in the politics of India in 1960s and I would say in 1970s. Okay, and most present day non-Congress parties also traces their origin to those opposition group that existed during the time of the initial first or two, one or two elections in India. All right. So there was, but what used to happen to those political parties, to those opposition parties, was that there was very much limited electoral success. Okay, but still, despite of having limited electoral success, they played very important role. Okay, opposition parties had only limited representation in the parliament and assemblies, but their strength in number was very small. Okay, but still, despite of being very small in numbers, their political role in India was very much significant. They provided continuous and principled criticism of the Congress party. These, what these parties did, they basically criticized those parties at a very principled manner, in a very principled manner. Okay, their major contribution was the systematic criticism of the policies of Congress party. Just a second. So what they did was they basically criticized them. All right. So they did this systematic criticism. So now coming on to next is safeguarding democracy. So those small opposition parties are considered to be very important in basically safeguarding. What they safeguarded? They basically safeguarded the democratic credential of our country. Our country is basically now being considered as a highly vibrant democratic country. That is because of that politics only that happened during that time. Okay, what they did was these political parties prevented any kind of public dissatisfaction from turning against the democracy itself. Okay, they trained and even developed the leaders to play a role of a good opposition leaders in our democracy. Okay, their presence ensured that the political competition in our country remained. It did not, so the dominance of the Congress party, so that it does not turns into authoritarian dominance, this was basically ensured by the opposition parties in our country. All right. Mutual respect was there. Okay. So the members of the opposition parties were very well respected by the members of the Congress party. So some examples are here. In the interim government that was formed in India just after the in 1946, even before the independence, interim government was formed. So just give me a second. So now the examples are that in the interim government, for example, B.R. Ambedkar was a opposition leader, and even S.P. Mukherjee, Syama Prasad Mukherjee, was a very staunch opposition leader. He opposed the policies of Congress, but still Jawaharlal Nehru expressed his admiration for these socialist leaders. Nehru even invited JP Narayan, so he showed basically the admiration for these leaders, and even he invited JP Narayan, Jay Prakash Narayan, to join the interim government. Such cordial relation basically declined as the party competition intensified, but such was the type of mutual respect and relations that were there. Okay, in our politics. Okay, now coming on to this next, now is the changing political phase. Now what does this mean? This means that early Indian democracy was unique due to its inclusive nature. Earlier it was like Congress functioned as a broad social and ideological coalition in the politics of India, and its central role in the freedom struggle gave it a clear advantage over other political parties. And over the time, Congress found it harder to accommodate all the interests. What happened as the society grew large, as the culture basically our culture got developed, and basically the interest, the number of interest that the people had, it also grew. Many modern things came. Okay, modernization was slowly growing. Now the interest of the people of the country was also getting intensified, due to which what happened, the Congress gradually found it very difficult to accommodate all the interest, and the result was that the people who did not supported the mainstream ideology of the Congress party, they started getting separated from the Congress party and started forming their own political parties. Okay, so Congress dominance was only one phase in the Indian democratic politics, after which many other political parties also entered or started entering in the political processes of India. All right, so that was basically the entire chapter. I would like to hear from you all whether you were able to understand this chapter or not. Please drop a message there. Okay, a message, at least just drop it whether all clear or not.
Karol, clear.
Okay, all right. This chapter is now on. Yes, so this chapter is on planned development. Okay, now sharing the screen, just a second. Yeah. So, politics of planned development. In this chapter, we will be understanding about how the development happens in a country. There are various ways how developmental activities basically goes on in the country. Okay. So, multiple ways. Let us understand. So, the early initiatives that were taken in our country for carrying out the developmental activities are, for example, we adopted the planning structure. Let's understand what does planning structure means. So the planning structure means that it is basically a part of socialistic pattern of society. What happens? There were two major powers. Okay, in the at the world level, there were two major powers. One was USSR, one was USA. USA was a capitalist economy. USA was a capitalist economy, and USSR was a socialistic economy. Okay. Now the basic feature of the capitalistic economy is basically the market. Everything in this economy is done by two things. That is, one is demand, and another one is supply. These two things are considered to be
Sir,
as,
can, sir, can
sorry.
we say that the basic motive of capitalist economy is profit making?
देखो बेसिक मोटिव नहीं, वो ठीक है, वही आई विल कम टू दैट, डोंट वरी डोंट वरी. जस्ट अभी सुनो एक मिनट. सो देयर बेसिक मोटिव इज that we will leave the economy, and the production of basically what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce, which are the major concerns of economy. So that is basically, that will be, who will decide it? That will be decided by the market forces. Okay. And what are those two major market forces? That is demand and supply. All right. Coming on to this next point, in socialistic economy, so how the, like, why these economies came? So why they came basically out of necessity. Why necessity came? Because it was observed that by leaving everything to the market forces, earlier it was thought that in market people will be employed, people will get employment, they will get salary, bonus and everything, and their poverty will also be reduced by that. But we just found that in market forces, the capitalists are just working for their benefit. Okay, for their interest. Okay, they are just taking all the benefits or basically money out of the market. Okay, they are just taking all the benefits. Now this was a very big problem. Now the poverty was rising, poverty was increasing in this, like at this time. All right. Now, due to this particular problem, the socialistic ideology came, the socialism came, and socialism said that we will not be leaving every production, distribution, and everything on the market forces. What we will do is we will basically plan, we will carry out planning. Okay, we will plan every collection of money in entire country at one go, and we will means the state will decide of what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce, and state will basically allocate the resources. Okay, so the responsibility will be on the state, and state will carry out 5-year planning. For 5 years at a one go only, there will be planning will happen for 5 year, okay, at one go. That was a structure of the socialistic model of economy. All right, now India, after being independent, also had basically some confusions of like what to do in this case. All right, so they also had these confusion. So Indian leaders were having apprehension of like what will happen if we will just adopt this model, okay, capitalist model, because already there is a large scale poverty in our country, and due to this poverty, what will happen, this will only augment, this poverty will only increase if we just accept this model, right? But on the other hand, what we found was कि if we basically adopt this model which was adopted by USSR, so this might help. So in turn, what we did, we basically adopted this model of economy. All right, we adopted the socialistic model of economy, by which planning commission got established. We started the planning commission, and by planning commission we carried out 5-year plan, and on the basis of those 5-year plans, we basically started uh, the economic activities in our country. All right, any confusion from this model? Any confusion?
No, sir.
Clear na? Okay, so how this planning was now carried forward in India, the early initiatives for planning that Indian government took, we will be learning in the next class. All right, until then, study well. Bye bye, take care. आप लोग बताना मुझे, टेल मी इफ एनी प्रॉब्लम यू आर फेसिंग, इफ एनी डाउट इज देयर. ओके, फिर नेक्स्ट क्लास में मुझे टेल मी. ओके, ऑल
Thank
राइट,
you, sir.
So thank you, sir.
वेलकम वेलकम.